Good evening. Today I will be discussing certain aspects of COVID-associated mucormycosis. Actually, we had been familiar with mucormycosis in the context of uncontrolled diabetes, as well as in the context of the cancer chemotherapy, stem cell transplantation, and all those things. And now we know that following the second wave, we are having more and more cases of COVID-associated mucormycosis being reported from all parts of the country, as well as from Kerala. In Kerala, also following the first wave, we did have some cases of COVID-associated mucormycosis, but since it was not more than the background rate, so it was not given that much of attention. So it was just treated like any other mucormycosis. But now we are also having in the state maybe around 40 cases of COVID-associated mucormycosis. We look at the causes for COVID-associated mucormycosis. We know that it is multifactorial. India is the capital of diabetes mellitus. We know that in Kerala, around 25% of the patients of the population is diabetic, and there is another subset, maybe around 20%, who are pre-diabetes who are not aware of their diabetic status. So, in the context of COVID-19, since this ACE2 receptor and the co-receptor are present in the pancreatic beta cells, it is associated with dysglycemia. And anyone who has treated COVID-19 knows that to control the blood sugar levels are not very easy. To add on to that, we have the problem of cytokine storm and added on insulin resistance. So, a diabetic patient or a patient who has been pre-diabetic who has to go through COVID-19 who is likely to develop dysglycemia is going to be a perfect opportunity for opportunistic fungal infections like mucormycosis to set their foot in. So, it is a recipe for disaster. That is uncontrolled blood sugar levels, and to treat hypoxia, we need to add steroids. That will also drive up the blood sugar levels. So, it is the right setting. But when we are looking at data from across India, like from say Madhya Pradesh and recently from Haryana, we know that it is not only in those patients with diabetes and those who have been exposed to steroids, even people without history of diabetes mellitus and are developing COVID-associated mucormycosis, even though they form a small minority only. We do have such reports from Karnataka and a few cases from Kerala as well. So there may be other factors so that we are unknowingly doing, which is contributing to the etiopathogenesis of COVID-associated mucormycosis. Having said that, what we need to keep in mind is that of the number of cases of category C or whatever be the COVID-19 that we are treating, so only a small subset is developing mucormycosis. But the problem with mucormycosis is that if a timely diagnosis is not made, the mortality associated with COVID-associated mucormycosis or any mucormycosis is around 40 to 80%. So we need to identify those persons who are likely to develop this COVID-associated mucormycosis. Obviously, that will be any patient with uncontrolled diabetes mellitus who has been put on steroids. So we need to be on the lookout for symptoms of mucormycosis. We know that mucormycosis can occur as rhino-orbitocerebral form, the pulmonary mucormycosis, the gastrointestinal form, the primary cutaneous mucormycosis, and in diabetic ketoacidosis, there is the disseminated form of mucormycosis. Okay. So this COVID-associated mucormycosis, does it occur along with the diagnosis of COVID-19 or will it occur later on? So we can have both forms. This one is the concomitant form where within say a week of diagnosis of COVID-19, you can have this mucormycosis. And usually what we are seeing is the sequential form. Sequential form means, so it may be on the second or third week, the patient may be discharged from the hospital. And one important aspect is that majority of the patients who are coming back to us never had a severe COVID-19 to begin with. So they never were in the ICUs, they never required oxygen therapy, etc. So even a mild COVID-19 can lead on to COVID-associated mucormycosis. So the onus has to be on glycemic control. The onus has to be on the right use of steroids. Right use of steroids means that steroids are a life-saving drug. We know we need to use the right dose of steroids at the right time for the right duration for the right patients. We need to use steroids only in those patients who are hypoxic, that is resting desaturation or exertional desaturation. So any patient following COVID-19 on with dysglycemia plus received steroids, if they are complaining of unilateral severe facial pain with facial edema, the lid edema with lid erythema, the blurring of vision, and you are having the conjunctival congestion, severe headache, the loosening of teeth, the scar-like black thing in the hard palate, and you're having the cutaneous blackish discoloration over the sinuses, and you're having the bloody or the blackish discharge from the sinuses. If this is the case, then we should definitely, in the current setting, suspect mucormycosis. And if mucormycosis is suspected, definitely the patient needs admission, and the treatment diagnosis includes debridement and sending for the biopsy as well as the culture and demonstrating this broad accepted hyphae. And the treatment part, we all know, is about administration of ample dressing, either the deoxycholide form or the liposomal form, as well as if and there is an induction phase that will last for around 3 to 6 weeks, followed by the maintenance phase using isoconazole or prosaconazole. But more importance has to be paid to the glycemic control while in the hospital, because if the patient is having diabetic ketoacidosis, the outcome is likely to be pretty worse, because in the acidic environment, this is the hyphae of the mucormycosis. That is, the commonest one happens to be the rhizopus. So the hyphae will grow better in an acidic environment because it is able to extract more iron from the microenvironment. So decay has to be prevented at any cost. The acidosis has to be corrected. The glycemic control has to be optimized. And along with administration of antifungal therapy, the role of aggressive debridement is also there. And if there is extension into the eye, because from the sinus it can extend in the eye to the cavernous sinus and into the brain. So we need to identify the earliest. We should restrict it to the sinus. We should prevent it from spreading into the eyes. And if it has spread into the eyes, what we should do is we should seek the opinion of an ophthalmologist and consider intraocular amphotericin B if it is indicated. Also consider excineration of the eye if it is really needed. The pulmonary mucormycosis is not very common in diabetes. In diabetes, ROCM is much more common than pulmonary mucormycosis. Now comes to the most important part. A disease with around say 40 to 80% mortality. So rather than letting it happen, the onus has to be on how to prevent this disease. So it will be about glycemic control. So any patient COVID-19 who is admitted or at home, the onus has to be on aggressive glycemic control. So we should not allow the RBS to cross 200 milligram percentage, because if the blood sugar levels are more than 200 milligram percentage, the endothelial receptor, the GRP78, there is a glucose regulated protein, will be upregulated. It is actually to this receptor, endothelial receptor, which is also present in the epithelium, that the ligand in the fungal hyphae will bind. So aggressive glycemic control has to be there. So we should instruct all patients who are in home care. So with diabetes, if they require steroids, ideally they should be having a glucometer. So without a glucometer, we should not start anyone in home care on steroids, because it will be very difficult to control their blood sugar levels. So ideally, such patients, if they don't have access to glucometer, should be in the CFLTC. And any patient who is admitted to any COVID hospital, they should have an RBS done. If the RBS is more than 140, we should do the FBS, PPBS, and HbA1c. If FBS is more than 126, PPBS is more than 200, and if HbA1c is more than 6.5, definitely the patient is a diabetic patient. So if that patient requires steroids, definitely you require tight glycemic control. This is one thing which we should keep in mind, aggressive glycemic control. Second aspect is that, so for 97% of our patients, we don't require any drug to treat them. So we just require monitoring. We need to identify exertional desaturation. So what is happening across Kerala is that all these patients are put on unnecessary vitamin C supplementation and zinc supplementation. Even though zinc has not been tied with the etiopathogenesis of mucormycosis, we know that almost all the fungi are require zinc as well as iron for its growth. So these fungi has the zincophores, and these zincophores are going in search of this zinc from the environment. So we should not be supplementing zinc to this fungus. So we know that multiple studies have proven that vitamin C or zinc does not alter the course of COVID-19 in any way. So we should not be prescribing unnecessary drugs. The third aspect is that unnecessary prescription of these antibiotics. So usually in our environment, mucor is actually present everywhere. So we are inhaling the spores of this the mucor every day. So inhaling the spores alone does not result in infection. For infection to occur, there has to be an ideal environment. The host factors are also very important. Host factors means that has to be an immunocompromised host with dysglycemia. So this is actually very, very important. So here comes the importance of unnecessary prescription of antibiotics. Usually the fungi are kept in controlled by the bacteria as well as the other fungi. So what happens in our nasal epithelium when we are using drugs like azithromycin is that the bacteria will be killed. And if the spores reach the nasal epithelium, there won't be any bacteria to inhibit the growth of this fungi, or the bacteria to keep this growth of this fungi in check. So we should not be administering any antibiotic. We know that the prescription of azithromycin goes with the diagnosis of COVID-19 for majority of the patients. And the recovery trial as well as the principal trial have shown that azithromycin does not alter the course of COVID-19. So we should not be using any antibiotics for treating COVID-19. Antibiotics cannot prevent superinfection. Antibiotics are indicated if there is an evidence of bacterial superinfection, which is going to occur only after, say, day 10 or so. That is, if the patient is developing new onset of fever with seborrheic expectoration, then consider antibiotics. Other than that, there is no need for antibiotics. The fourth, obviously, is going to be the onus of the mask hygiene, or what you call the mask etiquette. So we know there are so many patients as well as doctors who are reusing their mask. So N95 mask, etc. If you are reusing, so we need to follow the right protocols for reuse. And if you are reusing the cloth mask, the problem is that in our damp environment, the tropical environment, there is always a likelihood that the fungus might grow inside the mask. So in order to avoid that, we should ensure that if you are using the cloth mask, it is cleaned properly and it has to be dried, and if possible, it has to be ironed. And the surgical mask and N95 mask ideally should not be reused. This is very, very important. So we should not be using a damp mask again and again, because multiple studies have shown that the damp environment, it is ideal for the growth of the fungus. And now coming to the hospital environment, the role of the humidifier. The humidifier, so humidifier, when the oxygen therapy also has been implicated, but we know that oxygen is actually toxic to fungi. So the industrial oxygen cannot be implicated in the genesis of CAM in India, because high concentration oxygen is actually toxic to fungi, and the humidifier inside the humidifier bottles and all is very difficult for the fungi to sporulate. So that also cannot be taken as a reason for this thing. Having said that, we should ensure that we are putting only sterile water into the humidifier bottles, and we should not be using tap water. If sterile water is not available, yes, try to procure it. Should not replace it with tap water. So what I'm trying to convey is that diagnosing COVID-associated mucormycosis, we need to have, to keep that as one of the differentials for any patient presenting with sinusitis-like symptoms after diagnosis of COVID-19, and especially those patients who are diabetic and has received steroids. This is one thing. But our focus has to be on how to prevent this COVID-associated mucormycosis from occurring. And we should also educate the patients that if you are using this recurrent steam inhalation, so it can also lead to the damage to the nasal mucosa. If there are small scars, etc., are occurring, that can also act as a nidus through which the spores can get into the nasal epithelium. So that also we should keep in mind. And there is a practice of the steam inhalation using turmeric and cloves and all those things. And this also has to be discouraged. And we should tell them that the steam inhalation has a role only if the patient is symptomatic. If the patient is having nasal congestion, etc. But many people think that by doing steam inhalation, they can get rid of COVID-19. That is actually not true. So we need to convey the right messages to the public. Thank you very much.